I'm here to tell you about FourFive, founded by professional athletes George Kruis and Dom Day to optimize recovery, health, and longevity. FourFive offers top tier CBD, mushroom, and hydration supplements designed to empower the moments that matter. They believe true excellence lies in small, everyday decisions to nourish the body, sharpen your mind, and nurture your soul. So if you're in pain, need to relax, or a sports fanatic who needs their body just to listen to them, I can certainly relate to that. Join FourFive for a future filled with happiness, health, and boundless potential. So here is a little treat for you. If you put in the code RANT, you'll receive 50% off your first month's subscription. The minimum spend on that is £10, but do remember you're getting 50% off. So use the code RANT, you'll get 50% off, and Bob is your uncle. So go over to fourfive.com, claim that 50% off discount, and get going. You won't regret it. So welcome back to Rallen's Rant. It has been way too long, so I sincerely apologize for the delay. But today I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by George Kruis, who is the co-founder of FourFive, a company based around CBD, health, and other supplements. And also, if you weren't aware of that, George also was, in his former life, a professional rugby player for Saracens, England, and even the British and Irish Lions as well. So first and foremost, George, thanks so much for coming on, and how's things with you?
Well, mate, thanks for having us on. How's things? It's beautiful. It's a nice sunny day here in England. Yeah, I can't complain, mate. Yeah, I'm feel grateful without making it too soppy.
Fair. Well, yeah. So obviously, your early days and your body of work up until a few years ago was based around the game of rugby union. But I always find it interesting, like coming from Ireland, it's quite a basic story. But in England, whether it's private or public schools, there's a lot of ways to get into rugby over there. Well, here it's straightforward, 2 + 2 = 4 job. But like, can you remember when you were a kid or maybe a teenager, or maybe it took you till you were 22 to fall in love with the game, but was there a specific moment where a young George Kruis was like, oh, hang on, I'm actually half decent at rugby? Because I know in the past you've said you were a limited rugby player, but was there a point where you thought, hang on, I can actually do this and do this at a pretty high level?
Yeah, but definitely took a lot longer than I'd say other people. I think for me, my journey was like all about how much I enjoyed it. It was about like probably a bit of competitiveness with my brother. Like he got to Surrey, like the counties. And when you got competitive brother, I've got two other brothers, and these sort of things definitely fuel each other. But I think we growing up club level, wasn't involved in any sort of like academies or anything like that. I was just really, really enjoyed our rugby. Like they made I played at a club called Dorking, and they did a hell of a job of like keeping a group of players together that like really enjoyed themselves. I had good crack on socials, did tours, loads of like, it was a proper off-field sort of scenario. And I think like even within that, there was a full mix of like people who were private, people public. They did a good job of like, having no sort of, I don't know, having like leveling out everyone and making sure that everyone was just like enjoyed each other's company, and big emphasis on the social. So I think in terms of like where my love for rugby came, that I'd say that definitely was it, from like a social element. And then I was lucky enough, like really at the end of like when I was 18, got a trial at the end of school, sort of off the cuff from someone who knew someone, and these sort of lucky coincidences sort of fell into place, and then ended up getting a decent trial at Sarries, and they kept me for a few months, led into a few years, and then ended up staying there for 12 odd years or so.
Yeah, and with Sarries, I'm cautious that the first few years it wasn't necessarily I don't know, maybe like a Maro Itoje job where you just burst onto the scene. With all due respect, it took you a few years to bed in, but like who was backing you at the start? Because it really took you 3-4 years to become the player that warranted British and Irish Lions caps and whatnot. But like, did you have to lean on someone? I know Mark McCall's still there, but like, was there someone in particular early on that ultimately backed you, because like you had a few stints with clubs as well while you were with Saracens. So was there a
Yeah.
particular coach that,
Yeah,
really
I
believed it?
think mine was just a pretty like traditional sort of stepping stone approach. Like it was as basic as like school rugby, club rugby, academy contract, first team contract. You know, you play your, what was it, like B&L Cup or whatever it is. So it was like your, like the B team, and then you play. Then I got to play Premiership. Then I played European. Then I played International. Then you play Lions. Like it was as classic, a sort of stepping stone process as possible. I think that's just because like I said, I wasn't I needed a graft quite hard to get to where I did. I didn't like burst on a scene or anything. So in terms of that, yeah, like I said, it was quite stepping stone. But I'd say probably the people around me, like we had people like Steve Warfit who were like meticulous on detail. So I was playing under him, and then playing this alongside him as a player. But then also like so I'd say some players right on the other end of on spectrum, with someone like a Mo Both, who was like slotting people and had a very specific role to, get up, hit people very, very hard, pushing scrums and pushing lineouts and lifting lineouts. So yeah, I think I probably got a balance of a bit of like the thinking side, but then also the like the sort of get on and do it side. But then sort of coaches, I think Paul Gustav was quite influential at that point. Someone like my academy coach, Mike Harnard, although he did tell me like a few years back that he wanted to drop me after a week of being in the academy. I think yeah, they were quite influential, but it's just the people around you. I was stuck in a group like of very decent players, like your Jamie George, Owen Farrell, people like James Short back then, Will Fraser, Jackson Ray. Like a really good group of players, which sort of like definitely the backbone of Saris for a while. And you kind of just get caught up in that competition. It definitely takes you places.
Yeah, and with Saris, like right now, you're kind of maybe on the outside looking in, and you got to experience like from 2010 up until 10, 11 years later, the highs and lows of what that club really went through. And like at the start, I've always been a keen admirer of English club rugby, and even in particular Saracens. Like I've had Paul Gustard on in the past, and even Alex Good as well. But with that, like at what stage did it take you to win that first premiership before you were like, oh, we can actually do something? Because I remember like you've gone through so many coaches, and like we obviously know Andy Farrell better than most now, but like he really earned his keep there at Saracens, and even like Paul Gustart and so many really good, Sanderson as well, some quality assistant coaches even went through there. But like at what stage, because whether it's yourself, Atoje, Farrell, George, etc., like you, when you were starting off on that journey, weren't the top of the keep when it came to your positions. You weren't the best team in Europe or even the best team in England. That was Leicester's to attain. Like at what stage did the belief within Saracens like come to the fore, and you were suddenly like, oh, we're actually a top team here?
Yeah, I think what they did well was they just got a load of like grafters in. So like there was one that it was like Black Monday or something, where they basically cut half the team, and that they'd been in a cycle of cutting half the team every year. New big turnover every year. I think this one, like, it felt a little bit different. They didn't go after like big names or anything when they rehired. They went after like a lot of South Africans, just a lot of like hard working, brutal, like big brutal South Africans. And that was like I think that was the goal, basically, like install a very defense sort of aggressive, like hard working team, and then just layer in a load of like decent trips, layer in a load of culture stuff, layer in like actually a love for the game a little bit, and that really gave us definitely a platform. But we still lost a premiership, lost another premiership, then a European in one go, I think. And I think that probably after that period there, when we'd lost two finals on the bounce. I think then we had the platform of, we knew we could like actually compete and do real well. But then also because of like we'd had sort of 3 years maybe together at that point, that the culture was sticking. Less people were leaving that we wanted to leave, and like probably no one was leaving that we wanted to leave. So therefore, as a group of coaches, they could start to pick players and like, force out players which weren't sort of buying in really, and swap them in with players that were eager and hungry to like sort of compete and get there. So yeah, for me, it was like probably 3 years in when they could keep players, and they built that sort of platform. Because when you keep players, you can build on game plans, you can build on culture, you can build on on performances. So it definitely took a few years, but got there in the end, I say.
And when you say culture, it's the biggest buzzword in the world, whether it's
Yeah, I know.
sports or you'll
It's an
find in
ugly word,
business.
isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But like, you just go through the last 10 years at Saracens, some of the best players in England or even best players in Europe or the world, wore that jersey at some stage. But like, as much as there was those ski trips, or I think those trips to Florida or Lollapalooza, whatever it could be, they're all great and surface level things. But like, when Saracens was at its best and the culture was, razor tight, like what did that look like from a accountability, a behavior point of view?
Yeah, like the big things that I think they made it really hard for players to leave. So for me, what did that look like? That looked like giving me like they were paying for my education. So automatically, like and a degree is 3 years long or whatever, 4 years long. So they're paying for that. They were helping me out off field with sort of business, or they're helping me out. But they'll also, they might have at times sorted out like cars for you. They're sorted out crash. They're sorted out like this has made it really, really easy to be there. And if you've got a lot of people who are making it real easy to be there, then not only like us, but then their families as well. So like something like a creche, giving the wife like a bit more time on her hands, so she's less angsty around looking after the kid the whole time and so on. So I think they just went into like smaller detail of how can actually that they started it. They started that whole thing was they'll treat us unbelievably well if we worked unbelievably hard, and that was just like a mantra they kept pushing into us. And that sort of people just, it was so simple. People bought in on that, and like the harder you work, the better you got treated. And I think, yeah, culture wise, like definitely the trips, all that sort of stuff helps. But like the fact that actually they were, like I said, after a while, the turnover wasn't high of players, and they were starting to pick players that knew could add from not only a playing ability, but were actually decent people. And they did a good chunk of like research into, is this person, would they fit in? Are they decent people? Can they also offer something a little bit different? So like you look at like Chris Ashton, like, he'd rub a few people up, but he is a completely different character to a number of other characters like Steve Warwick or so on. And I think having that like range of different people also added to the group to like keep things interesting, sort of keep I guess thought process, all those sort of things evolving. And they just did a good job of making people's roots a little bit deeper. And within that, like there's a huge piece as well. Like people go their whole career and not win a trophy. So I think people can like put aside some of the bullshit and like sweep that under the carpet if they know that like the goal is bigger than say what some of their smaller feelings might be. And I think a lot of like people, I guess in a good culture, you accept and you can listen and you can accept stuff. Your tolerance is a little bit higher because the goal of whatever you're going after is bigger, and like you can buy into that. I think they did a really good job of like creating a culture, but ultimately that then fed into winning, and everyone wants to win. Like, like I said, you could have some of the best players in the world might just stuck at certain clubs and not won anything. I think people want to win trophies, and when we were winning, it was like sort of it kept feeding itself. I think people wanted to stay there longer and longer.
Yeah, no, I agree. And as a guy who knows plenty of the Leinster players, and that's obviously our local team here, that's like a very, very valid point where they're perceived as the best team in Europe every year, but those elusive trophies aren't in the cabinet. So one thing you lads did like insanely well was win premierships and win Champions Cups, and sometimes do doubles as well, which coupled with, say, World Cups or British and Irish Lions tours, I don't think people realise how actually hard that is to do. And with yourself, it took like 5, 6, 7. I think it was 2014 was when your debut for England was made.
Yeah. I shot out the line and versus New Zealand and in a 2-on-1 and basically lost the game for us. So yeah, I remember it well. It was a good moment though. It was obviously debuting was a good moment.
A double-edged sword, and New Zealand can make a fool out of anyone. With all due respect to them,
all out of me, that's for sure.
And it'd be dismissive of me to talk about other things, but like I do want to focus on your England career just a little bit, because now English rugby, after the World Cup, with Borthwick, who you know well, is now in charge there. But you went through the like post-Stuart Lancaster phase, and then, in my opinion, the best I've ever seen the England team play is at that World Cup when you beat New Zealand and got to the final. But like for you, when you were really like a key point in that England team, Eddie Jones was obviously in charge. Like you've been in so many environments and international teams, Lions teams, Saracens for, pretty much a decade or so. Like what was that environment like? Because I know some people look at it towards the tail end and said it was time for him to go, or X and Y opinion were thrown at him. But like, say, from that 2016-17 to the end of the World Cup, like what was that England environment like? Because from a playing point of view, whether it's yourself, the Farrell, the Vunipola brothers, even Tuolangi played his best rugby, in my opinion, during that stage. What was that like as an environment when you were saying goodbye to Saris and going in there for Six Nations and World Cups?
It was tough. It was tough in terms of like the training was tough. Like it wasn't like a kids camp. It was, you were getting beats, and I think that was like that part of the fun, I think, for it. And like I said, when you've got winning momentum and it's just like it keeps going. I think there's just a huge amount of excitement. A lot of the hard work had been done by Lancaster and Farrell, all those sort of bits. So there was a team that had been, had like that typical disaster or typical sort of like hard moment, which then, you can use that and you learn from that. They'd had that process. I think what Eddie came in was like, he's got an ability to like grab people's attentions, whether it's for good or for bad, or with some people, but he's got the ability to like really hold court, and when he's in the room, you are listening to him. You're sort of like, he has this sort of ability to capture your sort of interest in you and so on. So I think he just did that incredibly well. I think he had a really good coaching team around him as well, who could, he's got high levels of sort of like his work rate is unbelievable. He'll work all the way through the night and so on. And I think he had a good coaching team that could also do the same. The likes of, say, Borthwick as well, within that at that time. And I think like he's always obsessed with trying to like, what's new, what are we missing, what can we learn? who can he learn from? Like, always bringing different people in. He was obsessed with the game. He's still, like, clearly still is. And I think, yeah, he's a very, very competitive sort of person. So I think when you've got someone driving it that hard and you've got a really good coaching team around you, and obviously a good set of players, and probably the backbone of that England squad was a lot of them, those Saris lads that you mentioned. Sort of, I think when you've got a backbone of a team who, and you can pin, right, that's how we're going to play, the style of play, and you got within that team, you got the sort of the leaders within it in certain areas of, your hooker, your line out caller, your 10. Your number 8, like they're all sort of within the same team, so that thought process is already sort of embedded. I feel he did a good job of that. I think his like selection, that sort of side of it, and coach side was pretty bang on.
And with that, like I look at some of I'm always fascinated. It's not so much about like the results or maybe the man the match performances, or like I still think that the win against New Zealand in that semi-final, I actually haven't seen a better performance from a team in international rugby. I know people would say France, South Africa, or even Ireland, New Zealand, the latest World Cups
Yeah,
were
there's been
absolute
some good games
bangers.
recently.
Yeah, there
Yeah,
has been, but I just mean from like a pure, as close as perfection gets. Like I think it was only really Jamie George's
yeah.
overthrow. You probably hate me for mentioning that, but like it was
I
close
think that
enough
might be
to.
Michael.
Yeah, exactly. But like in that game, and even like throughout, like I mentioned, Jamie there, like he had to do his time behind Hartley for several years
Yeah,
when many would have deemed him perhaps a better hooker. But with even yourself, I believe you were behind Atoje Laws for a good bit of that campaign. Like how would Eddie deal with that? Like I know he was one of the first coaches that came up with the idea of finishers and that the last 20 minutes were the be all end all. But like you're, an ambitious player, so were countless other players on the bench for England. Even some of the guys who weren't picked were exceptionally good, like Alex Good to name drop one.
yeah, yeah.
But like, how did he cope with managing you, the disappointment that comes with not starting when British and Irish lines were knocking on your door?
I think like it's that sort of can you paint the goal? Like their jobs like acting and sort of convincing and sort of therapist, all sorts a good coach is like wrapped into one. I think can you paint the goal of like the prize is bigger than anything than any of like an individual's like feelings, I guess. And I think he just did an incredibly good job. And when you're at a World Cup and you're in the semis, you're going into you've done the quarters, you're going into semis. Like I could see with where and how versus New Zealand, I could see that being a potential sort of selection. So there are reasons either way, which I was like, okay, yeah, and you just buy into the what the role is really. But yeah, like he did a good job of making the prize bigger than just like our individual feelings. And I think when you've got a group that's pretty hungry and you actually like have decent chance of success, yeah, you just want to get however you can help the team the best. You're in there really.
Sign of a good coach, I suppose. And
Yeah.
with that, you're probably jumping back a year or two, but it's a good kind of comparative question to ask. You've reached the summit with Saracens. You were, a game away from winning the World Cup. You played a British and Irish Lions tour. Many people have said that, like, the pinnacle, like, you can watch so many motivational Andy Farrell videos about how Lions tours are the pinnacle, but like, is there really that much of a difference between a British and Irish Lions test compared to a semi-final against New Zealand in the World Cup, or Sarries v Leinster in a Champions Cup final?
Yeah, I'd probably put them all. I mean, I didn't play unbelievably well in that Lions game, but I'd probably put them all in the same sort of bracket. Ultimately, the opposition's the same. I think, like, obviously the way you go about it, the I guess your emotional and sort of the experience you get from playing in a club game to playing in a semi-final of a World Cup or a final of a World Cup to playing in a Lions is quite different, and your bonds with the people around you is quite different, and makes it a completely different experience. I think the memories or like the games I most cherish probably have been some of those like that Leinster Sarries Champions League Champions Cup final, because like you do all the graft with those lads, and I think you'll come in for different campaigns and so on, and it's unbelievable representing your country and so on. But 90 or 80% of the year you are with you're with your club, and I think those are like the games which really really hit when you when you win. But I mean that's definitely not to discredit that England or playing for your country and sort of Lions is an unbelievable experience. And I think the Lions was super special just because you play against these lads on on the big stage in versus Wales, Scotland, all those. You create sort of ideas and like you characterize them as certain types of people, and then you play with them, and you go train with them in a different country and down in New Zealand, and everyone is just a decent person really at the end of the day. So yeah, I think that sort of old school aspect of the Lions as well was quite surprising. I didn't realize would actually go and have a dig off field a fair few times and enjoy that side of it as well. So yeah, but all amazing experiences, but all I'd say pretty different as well.
Yeah, it's weird how tribal people get within their clubs, and even here Leinster and Munster guys will talk absolute shit about each other, and then when they link up at camp, they're spending all the time in the world with each other. So no, I completely get where you're coming from with that. And as like the rugby career started to unwind for you, like I remember this so well because obviously Saracens were close to top of the game when it was like 2019, 2020. And obviously England looked like they were one of the top teams and not the top team internationally. And you developed into, in my opinion, I'm not just massaging your ego here, but like one of the best set piece locks around. And was it like after the World Cup? I know with Saracens, there was obviously the side story of, relegations and fines and all sorts of things like that. Like, was it a particular moment that made you suddenly switch from I'm spending the next 5-10 years of my life, catching and calling lineouts, or like was it the Saracens ordeal where you obviously went off to Japan at the tail end of that? Like, what was it, a combination of things, or was there like an actual specific moment where you're like, you know what, I might be just over 30 years of age, but I'm going to call time?
I think the Japan piece was something I'm so grateful. I'm so happy I've done, and that kind of came off the back of I think going to Japan as soon as I landed in Japan, I was like, and I knew that for the World Cup, but I knew that I couldn't live in north and south of London my whole life and sort of like not use rugby to take me somewhere. So like even at like 28, a good couple of years before, I'd spoken to Eddie, and like we had a good relationship in terms of I do want to head out to Japan around when I'm 30 and and experience something different. So he was incredibly helpful in lending us an ear and sort of guiding us where and who and what clubs and so on. So I think that was like super helpful. And then I had 2 years. I went over for 1 year for Japan. Ended up loving it so much I stayed for another. And then at that point there, it was like, kind of, do I come back, try one more year at say Saris, try get into the 23 World Cup, or do I finish up? And there's like a number of different reasons. Like you look at body, you look at your mind in terms of like concussion stuff. But ultimately, I had like a genuine decent opportunity with a business that I'd set up FourFive about 3 years before. And we're starting to hit Holland and Barrett, starting to hit Boots, some of like the bigger retailers, and it was just a kind of a way up moment of do I continue to grind myself into the body, like my body into the ground a little bit, or do I take a step back and start like one of these new chapters? For me, it was like it wasn't like 100% want to do this, retire. It was very, very much on edge, and it took a long time. It took like 6 months to sort of decide that. But ultimately, I think I'd done. I was really lucky to be at Saracens and win a heap of trophies. I was lucky to play 45 times for country and so on, and like I could try and eke some more caps and could try and like win another trophy or two, but the idea of trying to launch into something completely new, sort of shackles are off. You can eat when you like. You can go to your brother's wedding and book that in from 12 months away, and all this sort of stuff, which the sacrifice you can't do when you're playing. Plus the fact that I'll be building towards a company which I'm passionate about, which has like good amount of like longevity and sort of opportunity in. I thought I eventually settled on that, but like I said, it was not like it was not 100% want to retire right now type vibe. It took a good amount of thought and process, and I'd done like I said, I'd started a business 3 years before, so it was the right sort of change over time to take something else pretty seriously.
Fair. And with the rugby side of it, because as I said, that maybe dominated the last decade or so. Did you have, as you said, Eddie was very helpful talking to you about the move to Japan? and being supportive in that arena. But like, was there some of your close friends who were players? Did any of them kind of give you that? Because I'm getting it now with some of my mates who are weighing up retiring or not and going into the business side of life. Some of them are like, you might as well milk the cow while you can. You know, the corporate world's always waiting for you. Did you get much of that, or even maybe a year down the line with 4-5? Did you get a coach calling you and being like, "Hey George, just so you know, contracts here if you want us"?
I mean, so at the point of retirement, there was not a lot of locks like out on the market. I think there was a few of them got quite injured, like long-term injuries. And I was definitely getting paid or offered to be paid more than I ever was as an athlete. So like, yeah, and probably going on to a contract at 4-5, which was probably, I don't know, an eighth less than what than what has been paid. So it is, it was a bit of a leap of faith. But look, I spent 6 months working through with a sports psychologist of like, is this the right time to retire? Why am I retiring? There's like reasons for it, and at the end of that whole process, I came up with a decision which I'm more keen to retire than I'm not because of these reasons. So I've never had any sort of like doubt of, could I, should I? Well, it's never been like a flash in the pan decision or like an abrupt knee jerk reaction. It was a well thought through decision. So I knew that I'd face these sort of like feelings of, I'm gutted I'm not involved in this or this or this. But then on the flip side, I have been lucky in the last 2 years or so, coming up to 2 years, to be still involved with England. I do line-out consultancy with them. So been in summer camp now. I was at the World Cup and all sorts. So like, it's been really nice to also be on the other end of that. That was an opportunity I didn't see coming, but it was really nice to be on the other end and actually see, what happens in a coaching meeting, or what happens, how does a selection meeting actually work? And obviously before, I was a player thinking like, oh, the coach is thinking about this. Are they doing this? Are they like, why can't they see this? Why can't they feel this? But actually, when you see the flip side, you see how much effort and time and sort of thought process, and like, it is phenomenal, the coaches and what they do. And this is even when some of them are like, losing games on the bounce and there's like high pressure, like the amount of effort and to see this group of players, say with the England squad now, young group of players coming through and sort of like playing and fronting up and playing some decent games, against some top teams, and say there or thereabouts with the top sort of 3 or 4 teams at the moment, is so exciting and quite, like I say, a bit of a privilege to be able to, go straight in without, to do some consultancy and see what's on the other side as well. So definitely foot in both camps still, but I think, yes, the transition's been definitely a one which I'm happy about for sure.
Nice. Yeah, no, because I saw a few pictures of you scheming up some probably interesting line-out formations with Steve Borthwick before some of the Six Nations games. So, yeah. So I was wondering what that was about, but that answer proves that, that you are a consultant and are doing stuff, which I think is good, keeping your toes somewhat wet in the game. It kind of scratches that itch a little bit, and as you said, the insights you learn, you can maybe bring that back to the business side of it. And that's also what I would like to ask next. Is, you're obviously now a co-founder with 4-5. I've been in the corporate world for several years, worked for some big blue chip companies, and I played rugby myself, coach rugby now for the last 10 years. There's a lot of translatable skills. There's a lot of translatable moments from rugby that you can put back in. But the biggest question I'd love to ask about rugby and business is like, was there a moment of leadership that, I don't know, I'm just using this as a make-believe example, maybe Owen Farrell said X and Y in a meeting, and then 6 months ago you had a similar scenario in your business and you were like, oh, well, Owen actually looked at it this way when that happened. Like, has there ever been a situation in rugby that you've now referenced in your later life as a businessman who might be managing a team or managing deadlines or breaking bad news to an employee?
I wouldn't say there's like a specific sort of thing. I think that the general concept of treating players or team members like very well, I'd say that is something, and seeing the benefit of it, from a performance or success sort of side, that is something which I think is definitely invaluable. Like I say, it's a bit of an ugly word, but the culture side, however you call it, whatever the name of it for is, I think investing in that, and for us that looks like EMI. Everyone in the business has shares. It looks like decent working hours. It looks like if there's any sort of issues with family or anything like that, clearly that's like sorted out immediately. And it's just like making sure that there's people are happy in their role, that they're feeling valued. That for me has definitely rubbed off from our time at Saracens, and our time at England and so on. Seeing the importance of actually investing into like the person, and we'll pay for people's education, like their budgets for health insurance, all these sort of things, which I want, like I talked about earlier, about like making the roots quite deep. I want our employees' roots quite deep, where they feel invested, where, they don't really want to move on, and they're not looking for, extra 5K here or there, because we pay them well, and it's, and they're settled. And off the back of that, then actually you can start doing proper business. You can start progressing and not, having to hire a recruiter every 10 minutes. So I think that's definitely been a benefit of sport, of understanding the team, and actually like, taking on feedback and actually being able to action it, because you have been part of the team before. That, feedback is very, very necessary and sort of required. So I'd say that's definitely one of the benefits. One of the drawbacks is like, you come from rugby and you have no idea how to read a P&L, or no idea how to pitch this person, or organize a Zoom meeting or whatever. Like you come straight from that, and you're like, what is going on? So that there's definitely pros and cons, but I'd say that like you need to work on those initial ones, but definitely the cultural side is something that I think most people would get right.
Yeah, you can't sports code I don't know, the A to B of how your Monday to Friday is going to be, unfortunately. And on the feedback piece, I always, in interviews I've done, and like whether it was interviews for Google, Revolut, I most recently work in HubSpot, like one of the big things they ask is, how do you deal with challenging times or negative feedback from a manager? Like when you sit down with a coach, they might tell you X and Y, or we want to go with someone who's maybe better in the loose, the set piece battle isn't as important, whatever it may be. But you might have feedback from, Dom, another co-founder. You might have an employee. You might have an investment opportunity or another business you're trying to convince to go in and maybe support you. How have you found, because you build up such a I don't know, you're conditioned for feedback in the rugby related arena, without sounding like David Brent, but when you're in business, how do you deal with that? Because it is your business, and sometimes it must be very hard not to take it personally if someone, say, doesn't want to invest or doesn't want to back you, or a shop doesn't want to have your products.
I mean, like there's been heaps of all that. I think in terms of like taking on the feedback, especially from maybe like investors or team members or so on, as long as I think they know like you care and you're trying your hardest to, like, say if it is an employee feedback, you're trying that, you will do your hardest to try and fix that or make it better or so on. I think that's a really good show. But yeah, I think like you say, we'd have heard, we'd have been dropped 1,000 times. We'd also been selected, and important games and missed important games, and within all that, things like injury and I've had 7 operations and 8 epidurals. That there's been a lot of disappointment of, I can't play because I'm injured, or you get back fit and then you get injured straight away again. Like it's that sort of piece is that thickens your skin for sure. So I think it's a combination of you get a lot of resilience from playing sport, and I think that's definitely flowed through into whether someone wants to invest or not. But I think personally, like that, and then this is like ultra cliche, like the only thing to take from them is you have to learn. And I think you have to learn from, was that pitch right or wrong, or and I think would be quite useful and quite good at asking actually that person, that investor, okay, well, what didn't I say? Like, what did you want to hear more? And so on, and asking for feedback. I think we've been in this nice position where, and we're sort of like growing out of it now because we have to, but like being in a position where quite green, and to be able to ask someone's opinion on, is this, can I get advice on this, on that, and so on. I think that people react real well to that, especially if you actually mean it and you want to learn and you action off the back of it. I think there's so many people, like a lot of the feedback from our investors, we've got a great group of investors. A lot of our feedback was like, not enough people ask like for our opinions, and not enough people ask like, these guys are heads of this or that, or females are heads of this or that. So I think, asking for a bit of genuine feedback also goes down the treat as well.
Yeah. And with 4Five, you're in the health space. I've had so many health and fitness and pharmaceutical and science experts on, and obviously CBD is a big part of what 4Five do. My old man, who's in the 70s, would claim it's, for hippies who want to smoke weed, even though he's far from correct in that statement. But as I said, there's some misconceptions based around it. There's plenty of benefits. There's plenty of, like with everything in the health industry, question marks around it. But what are some of the maybe misconceptions you'd love to clear up? Because as I'm sure you're aware better than anyone else who could ask you the question, like, surely there's always immediate one or two questions when you're like, hey, we do this, we do that, we do this, it aids you with this and that. Like, what are some of the drawbacks or the questions you get asked that you just wish weren't asked due to maybe ignorance or a lack of understanding as to what, say, CBD does?
No, not at all. I think there has been a lot of education on it, and I think probably people are a little bit more clued up now than they were. Definitely when we first started in 2018. I think probably like the big ones is like, can it get you high? So is it like, does it contain THC? So THC is a cannabinoid within a hemp or cannabis plant, that's the one that like gives you the high from a cannabis plant. And like within a plant, there would be sort of 100 plus different cannabinoids. CBD is one of those cannabinoids. So they extract that and use it for its medicinal purposes. But yeah, I think in terms of like how we got into it, both Dom and myself were sitting on a physio bed for it was I think my 6th operation and Dom's 4th. And exactly at that time, World Anti-Doping Association, so the WADA, took off CBD from its banned substances list. And as a result, like Dom and I were like, all right, let's give this a go. And got good benefit out of sleep. And off the back of that, really, when looking at products on the market, there was just not a lot that was like tested well enough for a professional athlete. So kind of got into it that way. And like I said, now we do like a range of vitamins, we do hydration tablets, we do some functional mushroom products. So we've got a pretty broad brush of products. And starting to make a little bit of traction in the UK. I keep saying we're in danger of making a business out of it, which is quite nice.
Yeah, fair. And what is, without going too long term on it, but like 4Five, and I'm sure you're reaching this now, 4 or 5 years, like that is still infancy for business terms when you consider maybe some of the other giants in your space. Like, what are some of the goals or aspirations you have for growth? Like in 5, do you look that far ahead, or are you very much a business that's like, right, let's plan this year, let's not get too far ahead of ourselves because we don't have a big enough history behind us? Or how you operate when it comes to projecting your growth?
Yeah, look, this year we've been very like task based. So it might be like, okay, we want to reduce our COGS in this product by 10%, and we want to hit this retailer, and we've been very task based. We're now in the next our financial year is September to September, so in the next I think next month we're doing a big piece on actually what are our 6, 12 and 24 month goals, with a 3-year sort of some like 3-year hero sort of goals really, and I think, or like North Star goals. I think within that, I think we are on like a build to sell model. I think, but in time and at the right time, there's so much we're just scratching the surface of, and like we're yet to do any paid search, we're yet to do any advertising. All of our sort of sales or revenue to date has been through D2C, Amazon, and we're in Holland Barrett, we're in Boots. We've just gone nationwide into all the David Lloyds, which have like they've got 700,000 members, which is 1% of the UK population, which is incredible. And I think there's a few other gyms and a few more retailers that we've very much in in-depth talks with. So I think for us, it's like making sure that we're ticking off these retailers, so we've got a good bricks and mortar set up. But the big one for us is like how we're starting paid ads in the next month. We're moving over from WooCommerce, which is a website platform, to Shopify, which is like really clean data. We'll be able to read it, be able to track it, and so on, a lot cleaner. And we'll start paid ads. So I think from there, it's we're a bit like excited, a little bit nervous as well. But yeah, I think there's definitely a whole nother side of the business which we haven't really unlocked yet.
Yeah, good place to be. Exciting times. And George, I'm cautious of time, so how I normally finish these chats is with a quick fire round. So as I always say, first thing that comes into your head, just spurt it out. And
dangerous.
Yeah, it is dangerous, but I always give the disclaimer, I will edit out if it potentially could ruin someone's career. But thankfully in 7 years I haven't had to do that yet, so you should be all right. So the first one is the US office or UK office?
No brainer, UK office. I actually refused. Yeah, no brainer, UK office.
Yeah, I'm on the same boat there. So next one, this is a bit controversial, but the best hooker thrower you've worked with?
Jamie George.
Okay. Your favorite book?
Ooh, there's a book called Die With Nothing, or I think it's called Die With Nothing. It basically like says spend it all, earn it all, but spend it all. And I quite like. I'm trying to like tell my dad this, and like encourage that sort of behaviour, because I think it's important. You graft very, very hard. I think it's like some people. This is a long answer. So Die With Nothing. I think it's called from Adam someone.
Okay, we'll check it out. So this is close to home. Most physical Irish player you've played against?
Tyke Furlong.
Okay, good choice.
He's a big pie, isn't
he? The most mental thing you've seen on a rugby pitch, whether when you were a kid, professional, training ground?
I was playing. I got a mum came on and hit me with an umbrella once when when I was at lower league, because I punched her son. So yeah, that was mental. I couldn't believe it.
Somewhat fair on her behalf to be.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I can't. Yeah. I can clarify. I did not punch someone.
Yes. So next one is, what is your biggest pet peeve?
Like pure laziness. Like I'll get it. People can be lazy sometimes, but like real laziness is that annoys me.
Yeah, true. It is. It's tough to get over. The best concert you've ever been to?
I went to Glastonbury recently, and it was monumental. So although not a concert, I'd say Glastonbury.
Yeah, I'll still count. And lastly, what is the worst hoovering the house changing the bed sheets, or emptying the dishwasher?
Hoover in the house. No time for it.
It's amazing the contrast of answers I get with that one, but no, I somewhat agree, because once I hoover the house, I'm drenched in sweat and it just gets me agitated quite.
Dishwasher takes 2 minutes.
Yeah, fair.
Depends how big your house is as well, to be honest.
True. Well, yeah, George, that more or less wraps it up. I will link, the FourFive websites and everything, your socials as well, so people can keep an eye on you there. But is there anything you'd like to plug before I let you go, or any news coming up that you'd like to share?
Look, our products are there for, we've got a mantra of empowering the moments that matter. So within the day of, focus or sleep or recovery, we've got a load of different products for to hit the number of those different pain points. So check us out. I think we're giving a decent discount if you wanted to try it, and let us know what you think.
Yeah, anyone who needs that, it will be in the link below. But no, George, listen, thanks a million for coming on, and I look forward to seeing what happens in the future, both as a consultant on the rugby pitch, but maybe more importantly with FourFive.
Thank you very much. Cheers for having me on, mate.
Cheers.